Welcome to the Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the WC podcast. Today, we have a very special edition. Today, we'll be talking about one of Southern Nevada's most important initiatives, which seeks to reach 45,000 young adults between the ages of 16 and 24. These young adults are disconnected from or not currently engaged in meaningful skill acquisition or employment. And to help us, today's special guests are New Ways to Work President and Executive Director Robert Sainz. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
Also, we have Vice President of Philanthropic Services at the Walter S. Johnson Foundation, Yali Lincroft. Welcome, Yali.
Thank you.
And we also have JobsFirstNYC Executive Vice President David Charron. Welcome, Robert. Welcome, David.
Good to be here.
Yeah. And I know we've known each other for a while, but the purpose of sitting down today was really to start to document this initiative that we've all been working on, and we're going to share a little bit more so that we can pass this on to other folks as well and skill these awesome initiatives that you've been doing in New York City and other places here in Southern Nevada. So to get started, Robert, let's start with you. You and I have known each other for a long time. We met, you used to do the job that I do here in Southern Nevada, but in Los Angeles, did a great job. You've also been the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Workforce Development Council when I first joined. And as you know, last year, I became the immediate past president. And so for all the years that I've known you, you've been not only generous with your time, but generous with your knowledge. I've learned a lot from you. And as we'll find out today in the podcast, you're still helping us be better here in Southern Nevada. So let me start with you, Robert. Why did we here in Southern Nevada appear to be fertile ground, or somebody that you thought it was, a good proposition to invest your valuable time, but also share these amazing relationships that will follow you after this question?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jaime. And first of all, thank you for your leadership. And really, that is one of the key components of why I thought it was important to galvanize folks here in Southern Nevada. Leadership is everything, because without the leadership, you cannot actually sustain ongoing programming. But the second, and probably the most important, is the 42,000 young people who are not at school and not at work. And I've spent most of my career working in that 16 to 24-year-old range, even though I did have responsibility for the whole workforce system. That population was very special to me, and also it had to me the best payback. Because when you have a young person who's out of school and out of work, their life chances for economic mobility, for security, for their own family safety all decreases. And the more education and the more training, the more certifications you have, it's the same things we tell our own young people. The more that chances that they're going to have economic security, the more chances that they're going to own a home, more chances that they're going to actually have their own safety within their household. So to me, that 16 to 24 population is a bellwether for the community. Unfortunately, in Southern Nevada, and many people didn't know this, and I think some of your own stakeholders didn't know when we first started talking about this, has one of the highest rates within the country. Mm-hmm. So as a metropolitan, you've been averaging over the last decade, nearly 17 to 18% of your young people. So nearly 1 out of 5 have been out of school and out of work. And if you don't have specific programming, specific coalitions, specific resources to be able to address that, those young people tend to get old. Yes. And they become old people without, or older people without skills, without economic mobility, without job security. So it's easy to address it now when they're in that 16 to 24 population than if they're at 30 or 35 and have all other kind of life issues that come into play. Lastly, they'll say the national effort to do work in this particular population. There's a lot of great organizations that have been contributing to that. But for some reason, Southern Nevada always tended to get overlooked. And when we first started talking about, doing this program here, it wasn't about doing anything new in the programmatic side, but it was actually connecting all of the programs and the resources. And earlier today, through your family of staff, Cecil and Ricardo and others, had over 60 people representing over 30 some organizations, all coming and spending 2 hours talking, strategizing, having hope that they could work together to actually bring resources to the young people they serve. And we heard from a young man today who got a job out of high school within the state government who would never have happened if it wasn't because of folks coming together and addressing these issues for this population.
That's awesome, Robert. And I think, here, actually across the country, there are more jobs open or more demand for workers from employers than the talent available. So that's an economic imperative for us to obviously invest in this work. But as you said here, even though our WIOA Title I youth money is very helpful, we can only enroll about 1,000 young people or 16 to 24-year-olds in those programs. And as you said, we have over 40,000 that need it. And so I think that really illustrates why it's important to bring not just us, but 30 partners together to do the work.
Right.
And more importantly, Robert, I think we're going to go to our next, but you were the one who introduced us to Yali and the Walter S. Johnson Foundation. So thank you for that. So Yali, you're next. I think, we're grateful that you believe in the work that's happening here from the day you first visited us. Tell us a little bit about the first 100,000, because there's a second chapter, but tell us about the first 100,000. What do you hope that seed produces? And then we'll talk about the other monies.
Well, thank you for inviting me. First off is that our foundation, the Walter S. Johnson Foundation, I call ourselves big fish, but a small pond. But the pond may not be as small as I define it. In that we have, for our history of our foundation, we focus on 14 to 24-year-old who have vulnerabilities, often through no fault of their own, whether it's foster care or other system involvement, homelessness, and we want them to succeed and be the best version of themselves. And like the rest of us, that's through education, career path, opportunities. And until recently, we didn't have nearly as much of a footprint here in Clark County. We did much of our grant making in Wausau or Northern California. But what we know as a small family foundation is that our dollars are not nearly enough. That what we can do is be a tugboat, perhaps, to push the ocean liner that is government funding. And maybe, or one of the first things I may be your first grant. I don't want to be your last one. I don't mind taking chances. And in fact, I had an old trustee that used to say, oh, Yali, if you don't take chances, who will? Who will? I mean, it has to be us in partnership. So when we do grant making, we always look on skilled leaders who are our spies. Leadership is everything. You have, public sector funding is the biggest funding in town, but you're not nimble. You're the ocean liner. I want to be your tugboat. And what I love about being part of this partnership is exactly that. Every meeting, there are so many institutional nonprofit partners. They're like, hi, May. I've known you for 10 years, 15 years. I'm your, high school coach. Like, it is clear there are leadership and relationships in Nevada. We're just the means. The relationship is everything. The trust is everything. And this work is going to take a long time. So I am grateful that partners like you, leaders like you, have been in the game for a very long time. I just give you flexibility to do what you really want to do.
And more funds, because besides the 100,000 that you gave us almost seems like a year ago, Robert, I can't remember.
Year and a half ago.
But about 5 or 6 months ago, you came back, Yali, and on behalf of the Walter S. Johnson Foundation with another one of those big checks that, brought the number up to 500. So an additional 400,000 to make it $500,000. And the announcement was made in this very room. The U.S. Secretary of Labor was standing just over a few feet that way. And again, I want to ask, why is your belief in us growing? Because you came back to do more. And I know we're going to dive into what next steps are, but tell me a little bit about what you expect the outcomes to be of that $500,000 investment from the Walter S. Johnson Foundation.
So, you guys play poker here, right? So you start off with you ante up. I anteed up. And then I thought the cards were good. Double down, or, like I had a pair of, it was clear just with the initial, like you got the right people together, you got the attention of the Department of Labor, other foundations. So it was not the time to be shy. It was the time to say, I believe, and I want a longer runway because I have faith. And you did. You got the city to come in with resources, research dollars. I mean, it was clear this was on the cusp, but this has to be a long game. It's not going to be forever. And I also feel very importantly, we like to invest in what I call the invisible and boring, but essential. And that's database systems, the Atlas system, which for almost, I have some 99% of the people watching, they can care less. But you care very much because many of your partners have a lot of different funding sources. They have a lot of data collection. You do not want them to put any way form an audit risk or paperwork nightmare. So if you can make the back end of the work, so you collect the information correctly, and then therefore if public health wants to make a referral to juvenile justice, the Boys and Girls Club, instead of making the client chase after and make those phone calls, because they won't, or go to the meetings, you guys can do it behind the scenes. And if our foundation could fund the truly boring but essential, then I think that's exactly the right job. And it also means you need a longer period to do it. I liked what the consultant you hired said. He was doing a beta testing, a pilot, a small one, another one. Like, this is not going to be tomorrow. We are not going to do this like FAFSA or like I want you to have time to test this small, and eventually you'll get perfect. But you need at least 2 years with adequate resources to build the infrastructure. Because, I really feel the dreams. If you build it, they will come. And they are already there at the meeting. We just got to make sure your head don't explode because the data collection is so god-awful.
Yeah, and this is, again, why the Atlas expenditure or that infrastructure being funded by this initial investments of the Walter S. Johnson Foundation allows us to build out that foundation for it, that platform for it. So thank you again, Yali, and to the Walter S. Johnson Foundation. Now, another, again, great partnership that's developing, thanks to Robert, because he's, again, being so kind to share his relationships, is JobsFirstNYC. And so, David, I know Marjorie was here as well, but I want you a little bit to talk about, just like I asked Robert, when you first came, and today was another example, you were with our collaborative partners.
Yeah.
What do you pick up there in that, and the spirit of that group that makes you, believe that this is the place where you want to be and you want to invest also?
Oh, goodness. So many things. It was almost like being in a room full of friends I hadn't met yet, in terms of just the level of expertise and passion and commitment to the work was so readily apparent from, many months ago, like starting this. I think there's an immense, regardless of the problems, 42,500, out of school, out of work youth. That's nothing compared to the amount of work and amazing leaders that are in this space, that are working willingly together, looking for new solutions, piloting, willing to fail fast so that they can fail forward. And that's where, as a workforce intermediary that's been working 18 years in New York City, you were loud enough for us to hear you on the East Coast. We're fortunate to be invited in through Robert and New Ways to Work to really think about how can we do more together, not just individually, because there's already a lot of that's happening amongst the organizations. But then also really making that case that what we're talking about here is not just workforce development, that it's economic development, right? And and they're tied at the hip. And we've made that case in New York City. And we've also been really enthused at the research report that you did recently, where you essentially mapped out what is the actual opportunity cost attached to having, I think it was, some 30,000 out of school, out of work youth. And you're talking about the economic loss to Clark County, I think was specifically, to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. Yeah. And so that's a really great case when you're starting to talk about how do we get social impact to start happening at all the levels that it needs to happen for something systematic to change.
And I'll share some numbers about that study in just a second. And also we'll come back to you, David, because just like Yali, you and JobsFirstNYC has also dropped its first investment here. Yeah. And we want to talk about what the expectations are for that first seed and whatnot. So I'll come right back to you, David.
Sure.
Again, Today, you guys heard a little bit more about the study, but I'll give you some highlights. It's focused on economic and fiscal benefits of connecting those 1,000 young adults in Nevada to meaningful skill acquisition and employment. It was funded by the governor's workforce or Office of Workforce Innovation. The data was provided by Nevada's Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, Nevada System of Higher Education, Nevada's Department of Education, and the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. And so, in short, the economic benefits of this initiative will increase gross domestic product, or GDP. It'll create more jobs and earning growth. The numbers, the fiscal benefits will increase the sales tax revenue, and it'll also create budget savings. And here are some of those numbers. And this is specific again of the 30,000 study. 22,400 were in Clark County. And so these numbers here for Southern Nevada, if you will, it means that if we successfully reconnect 22,400 young people here in Southern Nevada, and that's only half of the 40-something thousand we have, it means that we will increase the GDP by $12 billion or $535,000 or $500,000 per each one of those young adults. We will create 15,000 additional new jobs in our region, and there will be $4 billion in fiscal benefits or $175,000 per young adult. And so, yes, a huge, I think, wake-up call for our business community. It's not just about the employers need workers, and we're helping with that, but we're actually helping, like you said, further economic growth in our region. And that's why I think we have, as you said earlier, now 30 organizations coming together to push in the direction with your support as well. So before going back to Robert, I think we should also take time to thank our partners at Nevada's Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, DETR, who as our state labor agency, they have also taken notice of this and believe in it. And why I say they believe in it, because there's $1.8 million that's proof that they believe in this, and they awarded that money for us to help employers again remove the barriers for these potential workers of theirs, for these young people. And they gave us also $562,000 specific to spend on those young people, on the removal of barriers, whether that be skill acquisition, transportation barriers, childcare barriers, all those things. So that's almost a $2.4 million investment from our state partners at the labor agency to push in this direction. So thank you to our friends at DETR.
Yeah.
Robert, earlier we heard about where we've been, how we started, a little bit about where we are now, but you get to open the conversation, and Yali and David will follow about where we're going. And this is these next steps, and they're brand new for us. I know you've done it in other places, and you've been patient and the mentoring and the coaching of us as we move towards these new steps. Just tomorrow, we'll be here in the building talking to legal counsel about, the details of what it takes to go into this journey. But I would like for you, Robert, to maybe share with our viewers and our listeners, what is this concept of Jobs First SNV or Jobs First Southern Nevada? It's a model I know after the national model, and it's going to have big time national support from a proven model, but at the same time, very nimble local making decision. And so tell us a little bit about why we're going down this road.
Sure, and David would definitely add into that conversation. But first of all, it really is about creating an infrastructure that could help support all of you to do this work. And being able to attract new investments that are outside the traditional Department of Labor and your State Department funding, you need to have an infrastructure that allows you to do that. So being able to attract national foundation investment, we have to create a vehicle that is locally led but is nationally supported. So that's the intent of why to create this.
And it's a 501c3.
It'll be a 501c3 as we would traditionally know it. So it'll be a publicly nonprofit corporation. But the essence of it would be led by local folks with national representation. And the important piece to that is to be able to connect all of the partners. So that way you'll have, when there's a national grant opportunity, you won't have 10 or 12 different partners applying for a grant. Now you can stop anyone from applying. But if we do this right, there'll be a local coalition with a national infrastructure in place that could apply for the grants. And your chances of winning those type of grants now just skyrocket. It's also the ability to keep the overhead low, because many of us that come from the public sector, and I had 31 years, in the public sector, know that a public sector overhead rate could be anywhere from 25 to 40%. If you're in a university, it could be even higher than that. So we want to make sure that we are able to create an infrastructure that's able to keep the overhead low and still have the accountability to all the public rules and regulations that way. And as we build this infrastructure, alongside of it is the actual direct operations and more of the system building that is needed currently. And we'll give a great example. Desert Rose, we went there, and I say that's ground zero. If you go there, you have young people as well as older individuals who want to get an education, want to get into the workforce. But then if you look about the connective services that they have, and the ability to utilize all of the resources is fairly scant. And when we look at the needs that they would have, if we use Desert Rose as our true ground zeros and flooded them with support, so when that young person comes in to come back to school because they're overage and undercredited, and they need that high school diploma, but not only are we just talking about getting units, but we could really be talking about them about where are their childcare needs, because a quarter of our population are already parents. So you're talking dual generation impact. You're talking about housing and housing needs, and everyone knows the challenges that you have in the area with housing. You're talking about substance abuse needs and mental health needs. So we should be talking about serving our young people holistically. And if you're taking the program to where the young people are at, then it's easier to serve them. Then you're not putting it on them to run around and try to access services. I hear there's not a bus stop within a mile of Desert Rose. Wow. And so for folks, even just to get there, how can we make that easier? So those are some real practical programmatic things that would be able to happen. And then lastly is to start building systems. It's about connecting all of those young people that we know are not going to graduate with a high school diploma in June, and then giving them options and talking about apprenticeships, talking about the union jobs, talking about other training programs, talking about the opportunities that would happen at the community college and at UNLV. So now they have greater options rather than I failed. I didn't cross the stage, and then I'm going to sit at home or try to get a job in the service economy, which is okay, but it doesn't give you a career path. So building that systematic approach. And so we have a plan of doing a strategic plan that we're taking all this great work that we've done in the last year and a half and laying it out. There's a goal that came from you and your leadership team to reduce the number of disconnected youth from 42,000 to 21,000 over a 5-year period of time.
And goal. That's a big goal, Robert.
It's a big goal. But when you're able to actually have a plan, every one of that 21,000 is a person, it's an individual that you're impacting. And more importantly, you're impacting their family. The young man who now has a state job means that he has insurance.
A retirement bit.
He has a retirement plan. Yeah. He has a vision of what he wants to do. He has a career path that he go from that entry-level position to the department head. Yeah. And that is the kind of hope that you want to bring into your community. Now, in 5 years, would you hit 21,000 or you hit 25,000 or you hit 19? Yeah, to me, that is not as important as that impacting that quality of life for that individual and their family over time.
Robert, I have a follow-up question for you, but first I'd like to thank you for mentioning this thing about the bus, because I had no idea. I've been to Desert Rose High School many times, or the adult high school. We have on the Workforce Connections board many important, stakeholders of our region. One of them is the CEO of the Regional Transportation Commission, MJ Maynard. So MJ, if you're watching, I'm going to ask her that question. Why is it that there's no bus stop? There might be a very good reason, but I think what I'd like to illustrate here is that we do have the right people at the table sitting on our board that can give those answers. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to follow up on that.
Yeah, well, it was your staff for all the credit in terms of Cecil who pointed that out.
Cecil knew too,
and is actually working on that issue.
He is already, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And so my role here has always been as a coach, but as a translator between systems. But really, as you said, you have the right people. You have the right leadership. You have a lot of the programming. And the real idea is how you bring that all together. And you are going to achieve that 21,000 in 5 years. I'm going
to hold you to that, Robert. Let me ask you this question and it's a short one, but we haven't used the word yet, but I've learned from you all that another way, and correct me if I'm wrong, another way to refer to this organization we're going to form together is as the intermediary. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Just wanted to set that because we're going to keep talking about it. So Yali, your question is next for you. Last night we had a great time. It was always nice to break bread with the group people that you like and you enjoy working with, and we got to be introduced to other organizations that receive philanthropic funds from you, other grantees, and I sense that this is something I know it's very important to you because why is it important for our viewers and our listeners that we nurture and grow these relationships within this ecosystem of social impact in our region? And that's what you facilitated last night. But why is it important?
Back to being a tugboat. Often, as a foundation person, first thing, people return my phone call and I can feed them. And I write a check. Hopefully I do a little more than that. But I mean, at the basics. I get approached all the time from organizations that say, I'm a leader and I'm addressing this. And I also ask them, what's your relationship with the school, with juvenile hall, with the homeless shelter? And I know it's not easy working with government system. You know it's not easy in government system, and you guys are. But you have to, because the thing about it is, for our young people, they don't have the luxury of chasing down a small program funded by somebody with a big heart, started a nonprofit, but they're going to serve 15 and they're going to be out in the corner. And I don't have enough money, none of us do, for you not to work together. Like, call it a forced marriage, if you will. But if anybody's going to fund in Clark County, I want them to talk to the leaders and the players. And I want to take their scarce resources and make sure it's embedded in something systemic. I don't do boutique. I can decide to fund the best, most perfect program for 10 person at 200,000. That is not a good use of resources. And then they end up, it's unrealistic expectations. I love being at Desert Rose. Those were clearly the population we all need to work on. So I will host as many dinners as possible if I can get all the leaders to sit and talk to each other. You provide maybe the legal services, the school tutoring. I fund the universities, 2 and 4 year campuses. I'm like, I don't want a boutique. I will not let the perfect and the aspirational lead into helping the greatest number of people. And hopefully, if I disappear, the institutions will not. We need to build that public-private institution. So therefore, something like a Desert Road has all the referrals and they're all working together. And I ask all of you who may be my foundation partners, please don't be in a boutique. Please don't try to let the perfect get in the way of we all have to do this together. Please let our partners here, they may not come out with perfect outcomes. They may have half the kids drop out. I have talked to grantees who said sometimes my success is I got that young person to get out of bed. They're so depressed over the gun shooting and I have to take such baby steps. And my funders are like, did they go to Harvard? I'm like, dude, your kid didn't go to Harvard. You want mine to home? Be realistic. Be realistic with our partners, realistic in the work. Be realistic of what your 10,000, 100,000 can actually achieve. We can't do it. We have to do it together. And therefore, all the private dollars should be in a public-private partnership because it's the only way it works. Otherwise, we're at 5,000 little boutique programs that you have to go jockeying for our teeny grant over having the perfect candidate. Good luck. There's no perfection. You're not perfect. Your kid's not perfect. Be a little more honest and realistic in the work. So that's the reason I do these things. Because as I said, all I could do is write a check and feed people. You guys do the actual work. That's hard. So I hope you can sit together and work together.
Yeah, and I hope this morning seeing those 60 people from 30
Absolutely
good encouraged you, and we're encouraged too. And by the way, two things: you don't know how real the example you gave. Because I was telling David at dinner last night, I was a merchant marine 30 something, almost 40 years ago, and so every time you get to a harbor in the big merchant vessel, you have to shut off your engines because you can't maneuver. And so little tugboats come and they move you in. So I'm picking up where you're
big impact.
I'm picking up where you're laying down. And also you were right last night because somewhere in the meal I looked at you and said, Yali, I'm full. I can't, And you said to me, well, it's Chinese food. 2 hours from now, you'll be hungry again.
You were.
I was. And I was thinking, I should have taken, I should have taken the leftovers. So I got to start
right,
listening.
So the answer, you have to listen to me. Next time we give you some leftovers.
That's right. Thank you, by the way. Dinner was amazing in the company. So, David, I'm coming back to you now. Yeah. Again, grateful that since we met you, thanks to Robert and New Ways to Work, you've been here several times. We celebrated some milestones together already, including, again, the secretary here, including the $50,000 investment that I want you to talk a little bit about that New Jobs or the Jobs First NYC has put down. But also, I think one of the things that we're excited about is that you've already invited us. In a few months, you're going to have a gathering in New York City. Yeah. And you've told us about Pennsylvania. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about it. But we also are excited about going and seeing the work that we're trying to scale up and replicate. Because, again, there's lessons to be learned from what you've done already. So the question really is, tell us more about what's happened before in Jobs First NYC, what's happening in Pennsylvania, because I hear they're about 6 months ahead of us. They're also going down this road. And what are the lessons learned that you're looking forward to applying here, right? So we don't replicate mistakes, but on the other hand, we avoid mistakes and maybe replicate successes.
Sure. Great question. So, bigger picture, it's all a part of a venture that started the past few years, but really part of our 18-year history and growth as an intermediary, right? Which 18 years ago, that was a term that was not so common, but it was one where philanthropy and partners coming together around a similar crisis. I think some 200,000 disconnected youth, out of school, out of work youth. There's lots of different terms for it, but recognizing that they didn't necessarily need more players on the field, that they needed better lateral coordination across, and they needed sort of a catalyst to sort of reduce whether it was the technical assistance, the research, the resources to be able to, whether it was to find the right tugboat kind of funder or to find the right sort of expert or to bring in more partners in ways that they hadn't collaborated before, that's what the intermediary would do. And so that's been our sort of reason for being all throughout this time. And there's been some really great, wonderful successes. Before I came to Jobs First NYC, I was actually a director of an out-of-school, out-of-work program, and I benefited greatly from the resources that Jobs First NYC was bringing to the space and bringing people together in spaces similar to like what you're doing with the coalition, bringing them together in spaces that they wouldn't necessarily be talking about and sharing in ways that they are. And that's really exciting. And that's a place that's really rich for a workforce intermediary to operate, where people are already coming together with great expertise and just need to figure out, what is the way in which we can sort of, like a catalyst, reduce the amount of energy it takes for some impact to happen. So community-inspired networks for change. That's what we are, currently in sort of the planning phase and working in close partnership with New Ways to Work, and taking the lead and working with you all as our local anchor partner and other investors to really incubate and accelerate workforce intermediaries that would help to remove barriers and advance solutions for economic mobility in a given region, right? And so we're talking specifically now about Clark County and the 42,500 out of school, out of work youth. And so we're really excited, and it's been really helpful to have the context of that local expertise. We have the framework and the model, right? It's been stress tested. We've made some expensive mistakes along the way, like every maturing organization does. We have a framework and a model and a system, but we don't have the local focus, the expertise, the works, the solutions. That's all the stuff that comes from the partnerships in the ground level. In New York City, we work with over 240 partners. Without those partners and without the trust and without adding value to the work that they do, we cease to exist. And so that's sort of the same thing here, is that we we need to become part of the team. We're not looking to be another player on the field, but we're helping the players to coordinate better together and hopefully bring some new resources. And again, resources can be a lot of different things. It's not always just money and private dollars, which of course is very welcome. But it's a lot of times it's sweat equity, and it's other, having people work together in ways that they hadn't imagined was mutually beneficial.
Yeah, it's this experience that you bring of having done this before. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, and I want our viewers and listeners to be clear too, you're helping us right now stand up this intermediary, this workforce intermediary that will be called, again, after this national model, JobsFirstSNV for Southern Nevada.
Yep.
And we'll do, hopefully one day, the work that has been done in New York City, because we're going to be, again, learning and not replicating mistakes, but just accelerating based on the fact that we're avoiding those and making better decisions.
There's that sort of local, national, twofold benefit. And this has, again, been, in process in many great discussions that we've had over this this collaborative time to figure out that at the local level, you know what the issues are, you know who the players on the field are, you know the challenges, and you know the opportunities. But there's also sort of, when you're breaking new ground, are you reinventing the wheel, or are you taking some other framework, and then will it work here like it did in Northeast PA, where we're also incubating and accelerating a workforce intermediary? You don't know. And so that's where the national support sort of comes in, to be able to cross-pollinate not just across the ecosystem here, but then to take sort of the best learned practices in those systems of, a sector-based coalition, right? How do you begin to do that? And is there research for that? If you're talking about transfer to career collaborative, like making more career-connected learning in the high schools, how does one do that, right? And so there's ways in which there's going to be the local focus and the drive, but then there's also going to be that sort of national cross-pollination benefit that's going to be readily accessible.
A couple of follow-up questions, but before I comment, I know 2 nights ago I was talking to Marjorie about how my peer from New York City, Chris, is now hopefully aware that we're working together, that you're working with us here as you work with them in New York City. And then also, are my peers in Pennsylvania aware that you are working with us here?
Absolutely. Well, funny enough that you mentioned that, as we were meeting with some of the partners, some of the workforce investment boards in Northeast Pennsylvania, and we had talked to them about, workforce connections and the work that we do. I don't think I got halfway into explaining who you were and what you were doing before they said, oh, wait a minute. Is that the workforce board that is working within the libraries and it saved over $1 million in space and partnering with the libraries? And I was like, yes, that is exactly that. And, is that the one who had stood up like the first job center inside of a private business? And I was like, I guess I don't need to give them much introduction, right? So again,
good.
I told you the bright spots here are not just here, right? You have more than just a lot of sun. You're actually making these sort of innovative moves that is making its way across. And I think we hope to be that catalyst for that like I said, a cross-pollination, or that sharing of knowledge, so that it can we all want the same thing, right? And we're trying to move from a group of people to a team where we have a unified vision, that everyone sort of understands what their place on the field is. We certainly understand ours, and a big part of our, we believe in collective genius. That's one of our guiding values. So the more folks that we can get, regardless of what affiliation they have, this is going to take a team effort.
And I'm, again, learning from you guys all, right, in this world of social impact, in workforce intermediary. But I've also started to hear you talk about another word, and I know it's not necessarily the same thing, but you've been talking about the Funders Collaborative.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what that is.
So a funder collaborative is, for those who know, there's a lot of times where silos don't just exist in, say, government or, public or nonprofit. Silos also exist in foundations as well, right? But those who have the wherewithal understand that there's an opportunity to come together as a collaborative. And we talked to, Matt Bruce, who's at Chicagoland, which is the funder collaborative in Chicago. He talks about like the 5 L's. And among the 5 L's is collective learning. You have leverage, you have logistics, you also have leap. And I was like, what's leap? And he means in a funder collaborative, you can leap together, and you can be many tugboats who, it might take a few tugboats to move some of these things, and then they jump in together. So we've been working as sort of a technical support. We know that a workforce ecosystem needs many different things. And this is one of those things. A workforce funder collaborative in New York City is what stood up Jobs First NYC and stands to this day. So that's what we're working to do in Northeast PA. And so in working with funders, starting small, starting strong, having this structure, talking about the 5 Ls, we have actually convened over 10 different funders of various sizes who are absolutely thrilled to be part of the inaugural members of a NEPA Workforce Funder Collaborative. We are working with Yali and working with others, just prospecting the opportunity of what could that mean here in Southern Nevada. So it's an exciting times. There's a lot of good things going on.
Yeah, a lot of new steps for us too. So, Robert, and again, as early as tomorrow's 9 a.m., we're going to be talking to legal counsel about these things that I know nothing about, but I'm glad you're there. So, Robert, as we near the end of the podcast, any final thoughts? How do you sum up all this good stuff that, again, you've been a part of? We're grateful that you were there, that you seeded this and are sharing these amazing relationships with us. What are some key takeaways for you?
Well, I would say 3 things. One is that you have to have hope that folks will come together and look at the best of individuals. I think we've all been part of collaboratives and initiatives, and you get these high hopes, and then it gets dashed because something goes awry. So just sustaining that hope, as we face different hurdles and different challenges as time goes. But secondly, it really is about, and most importantly, about the young people that we're serving and keeping that as the center part of why you do this work. And as you meet the young people that are coming through your system and doing those connections, they'll become your best ambassadors of the why you do this work. And then lastly, to me, it's always about the outcomes. It is people could talk a lot. In our business, we talk a lot, and I don't like talk. I like to see the action. I like to see what's going to happen. And even if something didn't work exactly right the first time, go back at it with better knowledge, better effort. But that way you could actually prove out the outcomes, that we could see young people moving through a system, that they get their high school diploma, they get additional credentialing, they get a job, and then as they get a job, they continue that education and they continue that learning so they have a career and that they can move into economic stability. It's important not for just that individual, as I keep stating, it's important for that family. But when the extended part of that, it's important for the communities. And when you stabilize families, you're stabilizing communities. And that's really what our ultimate goal is. But it got to be based on those first term outcomes. And once you be able to establish that, you have a scorecard that you never had before on Opportunity Youth. That's the great consultants.
You have Atlas now?
Yeah, the Atlas is going to be helping track. And you have staff that are firmly committed and driven by this. And then you have friends like Dr. Tiffany Gardner and others that fully believe in the work that you're doing. So that's why I'm confident that you're going to have a great success in doing this.
Well said, Robert, and thank you. And when you told me you were going to retire, I thought I'm going to miss that guy, but I'm so glad you're still. I get to see you.
Well, I failed retirement miserably, and
good for us.
Yeah, at the New Ways to Work, we have about 40 projects around, so our plug around the state, a couple working in New York as well, and a few other places around the country. But it's actually being able to do this. It's to be able to take this knowledge and share it. Because it does no good if it's sitting in my head while I'm sitting on a cruise somewhere and in retirement land, but being able to share that knowledge with folks like Ricardo and Cecil that are going to be here and living it, and because they're the ones that are doing the work. So I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Well, we're grateful for it, Robert. I hope you know that. So Yali, how about you? I know, again, the times I've been with you, I know you're a people person. You're passionate about, again, impact. And as simple as you said, you know that food makes people happy, and checks make people happy.
Jobs make people happy. Bus lines make people happy.
Yes. And so what are your key takeaways from this, Southern Nevada ecosystem, the fact that now we're a few more steps closer to Jobs First SNV? What do you take away from this latest trip here that you visited us?
I love site visits. I love talking to everybody. I think that there's the big goal and there's little goals, and details make all the difference. They really do. And even though the big goal obviously is to cut the numbers from 1 to 5 to 1 to 10 or something, the little goals are the things that an inspirational leader like Cecil, Ricardo, and you are like, well, why isn't there a bus line? Why isn't there? I mean, what I love about my New York and my LA partner is I know Vegas is a big jurisdiction. They're bigger, and they were able to do it. So not to say there's peer pressure, but there absolutely is. That I have recently shared the story and the gossip about, well, the people in Vegas put a career center inside a gym. How brilliant is that, right? Like, where do you think unemployed people go but the gym? And it's cool, young. Like, good gossip spreads, and it only makes you want to do better and more. So I am very glad for Vegas to want to edge up their partners and other projects. I also think it's a twofold thing, that nobody is the leader and a follower. It switches all the time, and it's all these tiny little stories until we get to the big numbers. So absolutely, let's go for the big goal. We're not going to finish it tomorrow or even the day after tomorrow, but there's a whole lot of things we could do in between then. And I want to celebrate that victory. And I also do want to go back to what you said earlier. A funder collaborative is a beautiful thing. I have been involved in many. And at the most pragmatic part, do you want to write one report to a funder for 10 of us, or you want 10 reports? You don't want to. That's half the reason why people don't even want to do this. For the basic mechanics of we're all together. And also, if you have relationships with the funder, then we're just as engaged in your success and failure. It's not like, I think most of us in philanthropy, we really don't want a dog and pony show. We don't want you to give us this. We know that if you're being honest, it's messy and there's mistakes and it's failure. So try to make us one of your partners too. We're just, okay, we're the people with the chuck, but if we're real honest, you have the most chucks. You just can't move that fast. Or the state of Nevada, right? So let us be able to do what we can so that we ensure we all kind of move together. So anyways, fun to be with you guys. You're great. Like nothing like coming to Vegas to get really fat and eat too much, but that's okay. That's just part of the job.
Some good along the way.
Do a long way. So I appreciate, and I'm so glad I could be a partner with all of you.
Yeah, thank you, Yali, to you and the Walter S. Johnson Foundation for seeding, this project in its early stage, believing in it. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and Roberts and New Ways to Work in these next steps that we've talked about today. So, David, you get to close us out. Again, we're excited about coming and seeing you. I think it's July.
Yeah, so Adapting to the Future of Work in New York City. It's a two-part event, right? We have a youth-focused event with over 500 youth who are going to be attending as sort of a top-of-the-line professional development event at no cost to themselves and working with partners across all 5 boroughs. And then the next event, the next day, is the adult professionals, right? And so that's our workforce ecosystem and partners from all 5 boroughs in lifting up useful, relevant topics, speakers, dynamics, great ideas that could become something that might be the next best initiative for one of our other partners. And so that's where we're excited to have you all, and we'll probably get you some stage time because they'll be just as curious to know what's going on over here.
Yeah, sure. We'd love to exchange ideas, best practices. What do you take away, David, from this couple, 2-3 days you've been here? Anything new, anything that you've learned, and or that, again, you leave excited about what you've seen here on the ground?
I think it's not lost on me that, change is hard and change is slow. But what I can see is the staircase, and I can see the staircase being built by all these amazing, seemingly maybe small, but collectively very large actions. And as long as that continues to move forward in a strategy, which is what we're developing as part of the intermediary, talking about the Workforce Funder Collaborative, just trying to find those places where you can get, for the 20% investment and effort, you get 80% of the outcomes that we're looking for, right? Because we're looking to really create new things. We're trying to get new results with new inputs. And there's absolutely, it's just exciting. I look forward, every time I come to one of the coalition meetings, it just gets better and better in terms of the engagement, the folks in the room, every meeting is different. So.
Great. Well, we couldn't have done it without you. I'm really grateful. I love to, Yali, go to dinners, have dinners, host dinners, because you learn a lot from people when you're eating. And I sat next to David last night, and I mean,
Oh, no, what did you say?
No, I'll tell you. Not what he said, but what he did, which showed that I know now David can be very persistent, because there was these things, I know they're not tortillas. I don't know, they're pancakes.
Pancakes.
Yeah, very thin ones.
Uh-huh.
And we learned from you that you have to split them. And that wasn't easy. But David stayed at it. He turned that whole thing around looking for the seam, and he found it and came across. And so I learned that he doesn't give up easy.
No.
And he stayed there. And so, this wasn't David, but a lot of times also you sit next to somebody who there's the last piece of duck, and you might, that duck looks good. And then, they don't offer it to you. They take the duck, and you learn something about it. But in this case, that wasn't David. Of course, we shared very well last night, didn't we? So it was a pleasure.
We could be dinner partners anytime.
We were good dinner partners. So, David, thank you.
Thank you,
for
Jaime.
being here.
This is
Yali,
wonderful.
thank you.
A pleasure.
And Robert, thank you for being here today with us. We'll see you in just a few months again for this. Will you guys be in New York when we go in July?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then we'll see you there too.
I'll invite you.
Right.
And I think either somebody told me that somebody knew a Peruvian place. Was it you, David?
I think we could find one in New York City somewhere.
Okay, we'll go look
A
for
good
it.
restaurant in New York. How hard would that be?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, that does it for another episode of the WC Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Until then, stay safe.